Tonight we step away from kings and conquerors, from the roar of battles and the glitter of thrones. Instead, we find ourselves in the gentle, humid embrace of a Sri Lankan village, over a millennium and a half ago, just as the first light of dawn stains the sky the color of a bruised mango. You are not a warrior. You are not a prince. You are a child, small and quiet, born into a family of modest means in a small cluster of wattle and daub houses nestled between endless, shimmering green rice paddies. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth, blooming ginger, and the distant, smoky smell of a hearth fire being stoked. You can hear the rhythmic chorus of frogs from the irrigation channels, the low murmur of your father discussing the day's planting with a neighbor, and the soft, wet sound of a clay pot being filled at the well. Your world is defined by the cycle of the monsoon, the health of the crop, and the simple, unspoken rules of community. In this world, survival is measured in baskets of rice, and your future seems as preordained as the path of the sun. You will tend the fields as your father does, and his father before him. Let's be honest, the historical average lifespan here isn't exactly generous, and between seasonal fevers, a surprise encounter with a rogue elephant, or just the sheer physical toll of labor, you probably won't survive to see your hair turn fully gray. But history isn't just about who lived the longest or fought the hardest. Sometimes, it's about who held the steadiest hand. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your name is of little consequence to the grand chronicles. You are simply another small body in a village that itself is but a speck on the map of the ancient kingdom of Anuradhapura. Your family's plot is small, but thanks to the astonishingly advanced hydraulic engineering of the Sinhalese kingdoms, a network of massive reservoirs called tanks, canals, and sluices that turn this dry zone into a breadbasket, it is fertile. Your earliest memories are of the cool, thick mud between your toes as you followed behind your mother, dropping seedlings into the flooded paddy fields, and of the profound, aching tiredness that comes with the harvest. Your hands, even as a child, are not made for the rough handle of a plow or the relentless swing of a sickle. They are small, with long, careful fingers, and they possess a preternatural steadiness. While other children your age fumble with their rice cakes or wrestle in the dust, you sit for hours on the packed earth veranda of your home, utterly absorbed. Your toys are not toys at all, but the materials of the earth around you. You collect fallen leaves and arrange them in intricate, symmetrical patterns. You take a sharpened stick and trace impossibly fine lines in the smooth dust, creating labyrinths that only you can navigate. You are fascinated by the shapes of things, the curve of a water buffalo's horn, the geometric perfection of a spider's web beaded with morning dew, the way the shadows of the coconut palms stripe the ground. This quietude is often mistaken for sloth by the adults, a worrying lack of vigor for the hard life ahead. That one, your uncle might grumble, has his head in the clouds. The crows will eat his share of the rice. But your mother, a woman of few words and sharp eyes, sees differently. She notices how you watch the village potter at his wheel, your eyes tracking the spin of the clay, or how you stare at the few, precious inscribed clay tablets in the village headman's possession as if you could drink the strange symbols right off their surface. The turning point is as mundane as any other day. You are perhaps 7 or 8 years old. A traveling monk from the nearby vihara, a monastery perched on a nearby rocky outcrop, has come to the village to receive alms. It's a common enough occurrence. The saffron-robed bhikkhu sits in the shade of the great banyan tree, patiently receiving offerings of rice, fruit, and a few coins from the villagers. You are there, not to give, but to watch. After the alms round, the monk remains in meditation for a time. When he rises, his gaze falls upon you. You are in your usual spot, a patch of clean-swept earth by the side of the path, utterly lost in the world you are drawing with your stick. You aren't sketching animals or people. You are making patterns, interlocking swirls, repeating diagonal lines, complex borders that frame an empty center. It is, though you don't know it, the instinctual beginning of a scribe's art. The love of the line, the border, the structured space that will one day hold letters. The monk walks over, his sandals making no sound on the dry earth. He looks down at your work. You freeze, expecting a gentle chiding for wasting time. Instead, he crouches, his robes pooling around him like fallen leaves. He studies your patterns for a long moment. Then, without a word, he takes the stick from your hand. His own hand, though older, is just as steady. He draws a single character in the dust next to your patterns. It is not a picture. It is a symbol, elegant and balanced. The first letter of the Sinhala script. The sound ah, the beginning. He points to it, then to you. He says nothing, but his meaning is clear. This is yours. He then stands, hands the stick back to you, and continues on his way, leaving you staring at the mysterious, beautiful shape now sharing the earth with your own designs. It is an invitation, silent and profound. And in the quiet heart of a child who sees the world in lines and spaces, it takes root. Historians still argue whether the monastic education system of ancient Sri Lanka was strictly reserved for the elite or had pathways for gifted children from ordinary backgrounds, but stories like yours persist in the folklore for a reason. For you, the path has just been drawn in the dust. The monk's visit is not a one-time event. He returns to the village a moon cycle later, and this time, his inquiry is direct. He speaks with your parents under the same banyan tree. You watch from a distance, your heart a trapped bird in your ribs. You see your father's serious, weathered face, creased with a concern that is both worried and proud. You see your mother, her hands clasped tightly, nodding at the monk's words. The conversation is about duty, about merit, about the rare chance for a child of the soil to touch the world of Dhamma and learning. It is also, unspoken but understood, about one less mouth to feed during the lean seasons. The monastic community, the Sangha, is one of the three jewels of society, a pillar alongside the ruler and the people. To have a son accepted into its scholarly wing is a blessing, a store of good karma for the entire family. It is a future, just not the one anyone had imagined for you. The agreement is made. You will not become a fully ordained monk, not yet. You are far too young for such a vow. Instead, you will enter the monastery as a samanera, a novice, and a student in its school. Your life, as you have known it, ends on a clear, bright morning. You own almost nothing. A spare cloth wrapped around your waist, a simple clay drinking cup. Your mother presses a small, warm rice cake wrapped in a banana leaf into your hands. Her touch on your cheek is quick and dry. There are no tearful goodbyes. This is a practical, fortunate departure. You walk behind the monk, his saffron robe a moving flame against the lush green of the paddy fields. You do not look back. The path winds away from the flooded plains, ascending slightly onto rockier ground. The air grows a little cooler, filled with the scent of different leaves, pepper vine, sandalwood, and the dry, peppery smell of sun-baked rock. The sounds of the village, the shouts, the clatter of pots, the lowing of cattle, fade, replaced by the buzz of cicadas and the whisper of the wind through the Na trees. The vihara is not a single building but a small complex clinging to the side of a hill. There is a central stupa, a solid, domed relic shrine whitewashed and gleaming, a bell-shaped silence made physical. Around it are simple, timber-framed structures with roofs of woven palm leaves, a preaching hall, a refectory, a dormitory for the monks, and a separate, smaller one for the handful of novices like you. The place hums with a quiet, purposeful energy. A few monks are walking slowly along the paths, eyes downcast, in meditation. Another is sweeping the courtyard with a broom made of twigs, each stroke mindful and precise. No one shouts. No one runs. The silence is not empty, but full, a container for thought. You are brought before the head monk, the Thera. He is an old man, his head shaven, his face a map of deep wrinkles, but his eyes are like dark pools, still and clear. He looks at you, not through you. He asks your name, the name of your village, your father's name. His voice is low, like water over stones. He tells you that here, you will learn of the Buddha's path. You will also learn to read, to write, to calculate. The hand that holds the stylus, he says, must be as disciplined as the mind that seeks enlightenment. They are not separate paths. Your training begins not with letters, but with silence and observation. Your days take on a new, rigorous rhythm. You rise before dawn with the other novices to the soft tolling of a handbell. You help fetch water from the monastery's well, a task that teaches you balance and care. Spilling is a waste of effort. You learn to sweep, to wash the alms bowls of the monks after their single morning meal, to fold robes with exacting corners. This menial work is your first lesson in the scribe's primary virtue, attention. A wandering mind leads to a chipped bowl, a dusty floor, a poorly folded line. In the afternoons, after the heat of the day has peaked, your academic instruction begins. You sit with 3 other boys on a cool, stone floor in a shaded pavilion open to the breeze. Your first teacher is not the old Thera, but a younger monk, Brother Mahindu, whose patience seems as deep as the monastery's well. Your first tools are not palm leaves and metal, but a wooden board and a pot of wet, riverbed clay. Brother Mahindu smooths the clay on his own board into a perfect, flat rectangle. With a sharpened twig, he begins to draw. He doesn't start with letters. He starts with lines. Straight lines, horizontal and vertical. The world is built on straight lines, he murmurs. The horizon. The trunk of a tree. The post of a door. Your spine. You must draw 10 perfect horizontal lines, each the same length, each parallel, with equal space between them. It sounds simple. It is maddeningly difficult. Your lines wobble. They slant. They are too close, then too far apart. The clay becomes a mess of groves and corrections. Brother Mahindu watches, says nothing, then simply smooths his own clay board clean and begins again, his own lines appearing as if drawn by a taut string. You understand. You smooth your clay, and try again. And again. 4 days, you draw lines. Then you graduate to curves. Then to simple, repeating patterns, the same spirals and borders you loved in the village dust. But now they must be measured, identical, a chorus of shape. This is the foundation. The monk's eye at the local temple saw not just a quiet child, but a mind that sought order in chaos, and a hand that could, with training, impose it. The steadiest hands in the kingdom often began by drawing lines in clay. The clay board is your world for what feels like an eternity. Your fingertips become permanently stained with the grayish-brown silt, and the muscles in your forearm grow taut from the controlled, deliberate pressure of the stylus twig. You dream of straight lines and perfect curves. But the day finally comes when Brother Mahindu places a new object before you on the woven mat. It is a dried, cured palm leaf, cut into a long, narrow rectangle about the length of your forearm. It is smooth, pale ivory in color, and slightly flexible, with a subtle grain running along its length. It feels both fragile and strong. This is an ola leaf, the paper of your world. He also gives you a different tool, a real panhinda, a scribe stylus. This one is made of steel, with a fine, sharp point at one end and a flat, smooth blunt end at the other. It feels shockingly heavy and cold in your hand, a tool of immense, permanent consequence. The clay forgives, Brother Mahindu says, his voice low. The Ola leaf does not. A line scratched here is a line forever. You must be ready to speak to the future. But before you can even think of touching the stylus to that pristine surface, you must learn to prepare it. The leaves, from the talapat palm, are not simply plucked and written on. You are taken to a work shed where an older novice, a boy named Senna who has been here for 2 years, shows you the process. The leaves are first boiled in water, sometimes with a pinch of turmeric for basic preservation, sometimes in milk for a finer, more supple finish. They are then dried in the sun, pressed between boards to be perfectly flat, and finally trimmed to size with a sharp knife. Senna's hands move with a confident, economical grace. If there's a flaw in the leaf, a tear, a weak spot, an insect bite, it will betray you later, he says, sounding eerily like Brother Mahindu. Your eye must find the flaws before your stylus does. You spend days sorting leaves, feeling their texture, holding them up to the light to check for hidden imperfections. It is tedious, humble work, but you begin to see each leaf not as a blank slate, but as a living thing with its own character, its own potential for beauty or disaster. Finally, you are deemed ready. You sit with your own small stack of practice leaves, seconds with minor flaws, not fit for a sacred text but perfect for ruining. Brother Mahindu sits opposite you. He takes a leaf, lays it on a small wooden board on his lap, and steadies it with his left hand. In his right, the Panhinda gleams. The script we learn is Grantha, he says. It is the script of the gods, used for the Pali canon. It is not the script of the marketplace. It is the script of the Dhamma. He etches a single, elegant character onto the leaf. It does not involve pressing down, but a precise, controlled scratching. The metal point lifts a fine, hair-like curl of the leaf surface, leaving a pale, raised line. It is a negative image, a sculpture in miniature. The character is more complex than the Sinhala letter he drew in the dust. It flows, connecting curves and straight lines in a single, breath-held movement. He makes it look effortless. It is your turn. You mimic his posture. You place the point of the stylus on the leaf. The first touch is terrifying. You apply pressure and push. The line is not clean. It digs in too deep, creating a ragged, ugly furrow. On your second attempt, you are too timid, and the line is faint and broken, a ghost of a letter. The leaf, you realize, has a grain, like wood. Go with the grain, the line is smooth. Go against it, and the stylus wants to jump or catch. Brother Mahindu watches, then reaches over. He doesn't take the stylus from you, but places his hand over yours. His grip is warm and sure. He guides your hand through the motion, not just the shape, but the feeling of it, the initial bite, the smooth, flowing pull, the gentle lift at the end. It is not drawing, he whispers. It is releasing the letter that is already inside the leaf. It is a mystical thing to say, but in that moment, you feel it. The letter emerges, not from your will, but from the collaboration between your guided hand, the sharp metal, and the willing leaf. Your first independent character is shaky, a child's version of the master's. But it is recognizably the same letter. You spend weeks on the basic set, each character practiced hundreds of times on countless flawed leaves. Your world shrinks to the space between your hand and the leaf. You develop a slight squint from the concentration. The pad of your right thumb develops a permanent callus from the pressure of the stylus. You learn to write from left to right, each line a breath held and released. You make mistakes. A flick of the wrist goes too far, and a graceful curve becomes a clumsy slash. A moment of distraction, and you place a character an eye blink out of alignment. These leaves are not discarded. You keep them in a pile, a monument to your failures. Brother Mahindu makes you review them. See where your mind wandered, he says, pointing to a wobble. See where your pride rushed ahead, he notes, indicating a smashed junction where you tried to correct a mistake and only made it worse. The Ola leaf is a merciless teacher. It records not just the intended text, but the state of the scribe's heart, impatient, tired, arrogant, or, on rare, golden occasions, calm and perfectly present. Your first, shaky letters are a long way from the flawless manuscripts you see resting on the monastery's few wooden shelves, but they are a beginning. You are learning to speak in scratches, to converse with silence. The discipline of the line evolves into the discipline of the word, the sentence, the entire thought. You graduate from writing individual grantha characters to forming them into the sacred syllables of Pali, the language of the Buddhist scriptures. This is where memory and ink become your twin masters, a demanding duo that will rule your life for decades. Brother Mahindu no longer writes a character for you to copy. Instead, he chants. He sits with his eyes closed, his voice a steady, rhythmic stream in the quiet pavilion. Yi Dhamma Hitapabhava. He intones. You listen, your stylus poised over a fresh practice leaf. You must hold the sounds in your mind, translate them into the complex dance of characters, and then release them onto the leaf through your hand, all while maintaining the even spacing and flawless alignment that makes a text legible. It is a mental and physical high-wire act. Your first attempts are chaotic. You scramble to remember the second syllable while your hand is still fumbling with the first. The line of text strangles down the leaf like a drunken centipede. But slowly, through brutal, repetitive practice, your mind learns to compartmentalize. A part of you becomes a vessel, holding the chant in a perfect, suspended echo. Another part becomes the architect, planning the spatial layout. And the last, most trained part, becomes the artisan, executing the plan with mechanical precision. This is the widely accepted historical reality of knowledge transmission in the ancient world, the primacy of oral tradition and memorization. Texts were precious and rare. The true library was in the mind of the scholar. Monks like Brother Mahindu could recite entire suttas, thousands of lines long, from memory. Your job as a scribe is to create a physical anchor for that ocean of memoized words, a reference point that could outlast a single human lifespan. But you cannot anchor what you cannot first hold in your own mind. So you memorize. You chant while fetching water, while sweeping, while lying on your thin sleeping mat staring at the thatched roof. The Pali phrases, with their mystical, rolling cadence, become the soundtrack of your existence, even though their profound philosophical meaning, the nature of causation, the path to enlightenment, still floats largely above your young head like clouds. You grasp the words as shapes and sounds first, as sacred patterns to be preserved. The meaning, you are told, will come with time and contemplation. If you are very, very lucky. And then there is the ink. Up until now, you've been creating text through incision, the raised, pale lines on the dark leaf. But for certain texts, for emphasis, or for the precious illuminated frontispieces of a manuscript, you need real, dark ink. Making it is an alchemical ritual that teaches you patience of a different kind. One afternoon, you are ushered into a small, soot-stained outbuilding. An elderly monk, his robes permanently dusted with a fine black powder, presides over this domain. This is where lampblack ink is made. The process is simple in theory, breathtakingly tedious in practice. A clay oil lamp, fueled with coconut or sesame oil, burns with a clear, bright flame. Held over it is a cold, smooth, curved section of a coconut shell. You sit for hours, holding the shell steady, watching as the flame's smoke deposits a layer of fine, velvety black carbon onto the cool surface. One slight tremor, and the soot falls, wasted. It is meditation of the most brutal sort. After what feels like an age, you carefully scrape the precious soot into a small ceramic dish with a spatula made of bone. The yield is pitiful, a tiny mound of black dust that represents hours of motionless labor. The soot is then mixed with the binder. Here, the monastery uses a secret, slightly amusing recipe. The old monk produces a small pot of a clear, slightly viscous liquid. Gum from the kohomba tree, he grunts. But the secret is a drop of this. He adds a tiny amount of a dark, pungent liquid from another vial, fermented gallnut extract. It acts as a mordant, helping the ink bond to the leaf if you are writing directly on it, or providing a subtle sheen. But for the finest work, the binder is even more exotic, a dilution of a glue made from boiled buffalo hide. The smell in the shed is a unique cocktail of smoke, coconut oil, tree sap, and the faint, unsettling tang of the tannin-rich gallnuts. You grind the soot and binder together on a stone slab with a stone pestle, adding drops of water one by one until you achieve a consistency like thick, black honey. The first time you dip a fine-tipped reed pen into the ink you helped make and draw a line on a piece of scrap leaf, the profound satisfaction is almost spiritual. The line is jet black, stark, and permanent. It is a tiny piece of captured darkness, harnessed to hold light. Historians still argue whether the scribes of this period preferred incision or ink for different text types, or if it was purely a matter of resource availability and status of the manuscript. In your monastery, the sacred words of the Buddha are always incised. They are physically part of the leaf, raised and tactile. The ink is reserved for commentary, for decorative borders, or for the luxury commissions that sometimes come from wealthy donors. You are learning that every mark has a hierarchy, a cost, and a purpose. As your skill grows, so does your responsibility for your own tools. The monastery provides the basics, but a true scribe is an extension of his instruments, and that requires a deep, almost intimate understanding of their creation and care. The Panhinda stylus you were given is serviceable, but its balance feels off in your hand. The metal is a cheap alloy that dulls too quickly and requires constant, frustrating sharpening on a fine whetstone. One day, Senna, the older novice, nods at your look of irritation as you struggle to resharpen the blunted tip for the third time in a single morning. You need your own, he says simply. Come. He leads you to the monastery's smithy, a humble but vital outbuilding where a lay devotee, a wiry, silent man named Bandula, repairs farming tools and crafts simple metal objects in exchange for merit and a share of the monastery's rice. Senna negotiates on your behalf, offering your labor in the vegetable garden for a week in exchange for Bandula's time and materials. The smith agrees. You watch, fascinated, as Bandula heats a small bar of good steel in his charcoal forge. The process is mesmerizing, the roar of the bellows, the orange glow deepening to a liquid, molten yellow. He hammers the steel on an anvil, not into a blade, but into a slender, tapered rod. This is the core of your professional life. He then lets it cool slowly to retain its temper. The next stage is the fine work. With meticulous files and sandstones, he shapes one end to a needle-sharp, robust point. The other end he flattens and polishes to a smooth, rounded finish. The point writes, Bandula grunts, his first words to you. The end burnsishes. You will learn. He hands you the finished stylus. It is warm from his hands. The weight is different, perfectly distributed along its length. It feels like an extension of your own finger before you've even made a mark with it. The inks, too, become your personal alchemy. While lampblack is king for deep black, you learn there is a whole chromatic world derived from the forest and earth. For red, used for important headings or corrections, you grind powdered lac, a resin secreted by tiny insects on certain trees, with your gum binder. It produces a vibrant, vermilion hue. Yellow comes from turmeric, though it fades terribly over time, a fact that leads to its use only in temporary or less important notations. But the most crucial substance in your kit isn't a color at all, it's a preservative. Ola leaf manuscripts, for all their durability, have a mortal enemy: the relentless, insatiable appetite of insects, particularly the dreaded Dartigedia, the toothworm, a generic term for any beetle or larva that finds palm leaf a gourmet feast. To combat this, you are taught a recipe that is equal parts clever and slightly revolting. The primary ingredient is a decoction of boiled mango bark, rich in tannins which insects find distasteful. But the master stroke, the secret passed down with a sly wink from the old ink-making monk, is the addition of a small, calculated amount of powdered nolla bark, a purgative. It doesn't just deter them, the old monk chuckles, a rare break in his solemn demeanor. It encourages them to vacate the premises with great haste. They lose their taste for literature altogether. The finished preservative, a dark, pungent liquid, is lightly applied to the finished leaves with a soft cloth. It leaves a faint, astringent smell that will cling to your manuscripts, and to your hands, for years. It is the scent of longevity, of a quiet war won against the jaws of time. You also craft your own burnishing tool, a gaupother. You find a smooth, oval river stone that fits perfectly in the palm of your hand. You polish it for hours with finer and finer grits of sand until it is as slick as glass. After you have incised a leaf, you use the flat end of your stylus for the initial smoothing of the raised script, but for the final, glorious finish, you use your stone. You lay the leaf on a hard, flat surface and rub the stone over it in firm, circular motions. This presses down the tiny, ragged fibers raised by the stylus, polishes the surface to a gentle sheen, and makes the incised letters stand out crisp and clear against the now darker leaf. The sound is a soft, rhythmic shush shush shush, the sound of knowledge being sealed into permanence. It is deeply, profoundly satisfying. Each tool you make or adapt becomes a part of you. Your stylus weighs to the shape of your grip. Your burnishing stone absorbs the oils from your skin. Your mortar and pestle for grinding inks develop a unique pattern of wear. This isn't just preparation, it is the foundation of the craft. A scribe with poorly made or ill-suited tools is like a farmer with a broken plow. The battle is lost before it begins, not to weather or war, but to bluntness and borers. Your first commission outside the sacred walls of the monastery feels jarringly, almost blasphemously, worldly. The request comes not from a senior monk, but through the headman of your own village, who has made the journey to the vihara to seek you out. A wealthy spice merchant from the larger town downriver, a man named Damsak, has heard of the monastery's young scribe with the steady hand. He needs a ledger copied. The old one, kept by a now-deceased clerk on bundled strips of bamboo, is fraying, and the merchant wants a proper, durable Ola leaf record of his transactions from the past 5 years. It is a test, a practical application of your skill, and a chance for the monastery to earn a little merit, and a more tangible donation of rice, cloth, and oil. Brother Mahindu gives his permission with a solemn nod. Even accounts can be a meditation on impermanence, he says, a twinkle in his eye. Numbers rise and fall like breath. Record them clearly. You travel back down the path to the village with the headman, your new stylus and a bundle of good quality leaves tucked into a cloth satchel. It feels strange to return not as a child of the paddies, but as a visiting artisan. Your parents look at you with a new, respectful distance. You sleep in your old home, but you are a guest. The next morning, you are taken to Damsak's compound, a large, bustling enclosure that smells overwhelmingly of cinnamon, pepper, cardamom, and the salty tang of dried fish. The merchant is a round, busy man with a voice used to shouting over market noise. He leads you to a shaded veranda, plops the crumbling bundle of bamboo strips in front of you, points to a low desk, and says, "Make it clean. Make it clear. Don't ask me what the smudges say, figure it out." Then he is off, barking at a porter about the weight of a sack of cloves. You unroll the old ledger. It is a disaster. The bamboo strips are tied together with cord that is rotting. The script is a rushed, sloppy form of Sinhala, not the elegant grantha you've mastered. Numbers are represented by a system of vertical ticks and symbols that you have to decipher through context. There are stains that look like beetle juice, tea, and possibly goat blood. The entries are a chaotic log of debits and credits. So many kahapanas, coins, paid for a shipment of areca nut from the hill country. So much pepper sold to a Tamil trader from the south. A debt owed for the repair of a cart. A payment received for cinnamon bark destined, the ledger claims, for a Roman ship at the great port of Manti. It is the gritty, unpoetic reality of commerce, the engine that fuels the kingdom and, indirectly, the monasteries that depend on alms from merchants like Damsak. Your training kicks in. You begin the tedious, painstaking work of transcription. You prepare your leaves, ruling faint, guiding lines with a chalk-dusted string snapped against the surface, a trick Senna taught you. You then start to incise. You translate the chaotic scroll into neat, orderly columns. Date, description, debit, credit, balance. You create a consistent, legible script, a hybrid of formal Sinhala and the numerical symbols. It is mind-numbing work. There is no spiritual cadence here, no sacred syllable to elevate the task. It is just numbers and goods. Pepper, 20 measures, credit 35 kahapanas. River toll, debit 2 kahapanas. Oil for lamps, debit 1 kahapana. You fight boredom and frustration. The mundane horror of a smudged entry where you can't tell if a mark is a 5 or a 3 forces you to track back through previous transactions to infer the correct amount. A brutal lesson in forensic accounting, 1st century style. Yet, within this tedium, you find a different kind of rhythm, a different kind of story. This ledger isn't about enlightenment. It's about survival, ambition, and connection. You are mapping the veins of trade that pulse through the island. You see the seasons in the goods, cinnamon harvests, monsoon delays in shipping, the price of rice spiking before a festival. You see Damsak's world, his partnerships, his risks, his losses on a spoiled cargo of dried fish, his windfall on a rare consignment of pearls. It is, in its own way, a sacred text of human endeavor. And you realize the power you hold in your hand. A misplaced stroke, a deliberate alteration of a number, could silently steal a fortune or ruin a man. The trust placed in you is immense, and it has nothing to do with piety and everything to do with perceived impartiality. You are of the monastery, and therefore, hopefully, beyond earthly greed. It's your first taste of the scribe's quiet, secular authority. After weeks of work, you present the finished ledger, 2 bound volumes of Ola leaves, neat as a military formation. Damsak flips through them, his businessman's eyes scanning your columns. He grunts, a sound you've learned is his highest praise. He pays the monastery's donation in full and adds an extra copper coin for you personally, your first wage. It feels heavy in your hand, not like merit, but like a key to a different door. You have learned that your skill can capture not only the words of the divine, but the arithmetic of the everyday. Both, you are starting to understand, hold the world together. The merchant's ledger, it turns out, was your audition for a far larger stage. Word of the clean, meticulous accounts reaches not just other traders, but the low-level administrators who manage the land grants and tithes for the region, officials who are part of the vast, sprawling bureaucracy of the kingdom of Anuradhapura. A summons arrives at the monastery, not on a simple Ola leaf, but on a small, polished slab of wood carried by a royal messenger wearing a tunic stamped with the symbol of the lion. The king, reigning from the magnificent capital over 100 miles to the north, has need of skilled scribes for the record-keeping of the kingdom. Your name, along with that of Brother Mahindu, who gracefully declines, citing his teaching duties, has been put forward. The Thera calls you before him. This is a path of great service and great temptation, he says. You will see the world in its grandeur and its grime. Remember, the hand that records history is not the hand that makes it. Your duty is to the truth of the mark, not to the favor of the powerful. With his blessing and a profound sense of vertigo, you prepare to leave. The journey to Anuradhapura is the longest you have ever undertaken. You travel in a small caravan of carts carrying tax goods, blocks of salt, sacks of rice, bundles of areca nut, escorted by a few bored-looking soldiers. The world unfolds as you move north, away from the wet zone hills. The landscape changes to a drier, park-like plain dotted with enormous, man-made reservoirs that glint like sheets of silver in the sun. These are the legendary tanks, Kala Wewa, Tissa Wewa, feats of engineering so vast they seem like inland seas, their bunds, dams, stretching for miles. Canals, lined with stone, carry their life-giving water to fields of rice and sesame. The scale of it humbles you. This is not the work of a village or a monastery. This is the work of a god-king commanding tens of thousands. The ordered landscape is a physical manifestation of power, a declaration that here, human will has conquered the aridity of the earth. Then you see it. First, the tip of a dagoba, a stupa, rising above the green canopy of trees, gleaming white like a misplaced mountain peak. Then another. And another. As the road crests a final rise, Anuradhapura spreads before you, a city of stone and plaster and whitewashed brick, shimmering in the heat haze. It is immense. The air is thick with new smells, dust, incense from 100 temples, the pungent odor of crowded humanity, of cooking fires, of animals. The sounds are a roaring cacophony, hawkers, temple bells, the rumble of carts on stone-paved streets, the distant trumpet of an elephant. You feel your village-bred, monastery-honed quiet scream in protest. You are taken not to the royal palace, but to a large, functional compound of administrative buildings near the city's great brazen palace, a 9-story monastic residence with a roof said to be clad in copper. This is the scribal core quarters. Your new world is one of organized, relentless production. You are one of dozens of scribes, each assigned to a specific department: land records, temple donations, military logistics, royal decrees. You are initially placed in the department of grain stores, recording the influx and outflow of paddy from the royal granaries. The work is similar to Damsak's ledger, but multiplied by 1,000. The numbers are staggering, the responsibility terrifying. A mistake here could mean a shortage misreported, a region going hungry, or your own head on a block, though the latter is thankfully rare. The system has layers of auditors for that. You write on everything: Ola leaves for permanent records, wooden tablets for temporary tallies, even sometimes on thin strips of metal for important edicts. You learn new, more efficient cursive forms of script. You work in a large, hall-like room, the constant scratch-scratch of dozens of styli, a buzzing chorus of bureaucracy. It is utterly impersonal. You are a pair of hands, a vessel for data. The grandeur of the city outside, the processions, the festivals, the sheer spectacle of power, is a distant rumor. Your view is of columns and totals, of the dry poetry of supply and demand. You have been summoned to the royal city not to bask in its glory, but to become a tiny, essential cog in the machine that makes that glory possible. You record the kingdom's breath, its consumption and its waste, and in doing so, you realize the true foundation of power isn't just the army or the king's divine right. It's the meticulous, boring, ink-stained record of who owns what, who owes what, and where the rice is stored. Your diligence in the grain department does not go unnoticed. After a year of impeccable, mind-numbing tallies, you are summoned by the keeper of the royal library, a venerable, parchment dry man named Ananda whose back is permanently curved from a lifetime hunched over texts. The library is not a single building, but a complex within the Mahavihara, the great monastery at the heart of Anuradhapura. It is a sanctuary of a different order than the noisy administrative halls. The air here is still, cool, and carries a scent you've come to love and revere. The smell of old palm leaves, of camphor and cedar wood used in preservation, of the slightly sweet, fungal aroma of knowledge aging in the dark. Your new task is preservation. You are led into a scriptorium attached to the main library hall. Light slants in through high, latticed windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the beams. On long, low tables lie manuscripts in various states of decay. Some are simply faded, the incised letters filled with decades of dust, making them hard to read. Others show the brown, lace-like traces of mold, or have brittle, cracked edges where insects have feasted despite the preservatives. Your job, you are told, is not to interpret, but to replicate. You are to create perfect, new copies of these aging texts before they are lost forever. It is the highest, most sacred duty you have been given. A mistake in a grain ledger means a numerical discrepancy. A mistake here could mean the loss of a word of the Buddha, a corrupt philosophical line, a miscopied medical recipe. The first manuscript assigned to you is a section of the Vinaya Pitaka, the monastic code of discipline. The original is ancient. The ola leaves darken to a deep tobacco brown, bound between wooden boards carved with lotus motifs. You handle it with a reverence bordering on terror. You begin the ritual. You clean your workspace meticulously. You prepare a stack of fresh, first-quality leaves, each one examined and blessed with a drop of mango bark preservative. You then spend days simply reading the old text, not to understand its meaning deeply, but to absorb its rhythm, its layout, its quirks. You note where the original scribe made a tiny correction, a dot or a dash inserted above a line. You must decide whether to replicate that correction or clean the text to its intended form. The keeper's rule is strict. Replicate everything, including the apparent errors, but add a tiny, almost invisible mark of your own, a minute dot in the margin, to indicate you have faithfully copied a potential flaw. This is the ethics of the preservationist, honesty over perfection. You start to incise. The work is slow, meditative, and profoundly connecting. As you scratch each character into the new leaf, you feel a ghostly kinship with the long-dead scribe who first made these marks. You wonder about his life, his worries, whether his hand ached as yours does now. You notice his slight stylistic flourishes, the way his lines tapered, the consistent pressure of his stylus. You are not just copying words, you are performing a piece of history, breathing new life into a fading voice. The library itself is a cavernous hall of palm leaf lore, shelves rising into the gloom, holding thousands of such voices, religious texts, grammars, treatises on medicine, astrology, law, and poetry. The weight of it is immense. You are a link in a chain stretching back centuries and, you hope, forward into an unknowable future. One afternoon, you encounter a surprising, slightly amusing detail. In the margin of a very old medical text, between verses on treating fever with neem leaves, the original scribe has added a tiny, personal note in a more hurried hand. For toothache, chew the bark of the katamba tree. It works. Trust me. Mahanama. It is a breathtaking moment of intimacy across the ages. This Mahanama, a professional scribe, perhaps suffering a throbbing jaw as he worked, felt compelled to add this mundane, practical tip to a sacred scholarly corpus. You faithfully copy the note, including the dash and the name, a smile touching your lips. It is a reminder that these texts were made by human beings, with human aches and human urges to share what they knew. The library is not just a tomb for perfect ideas, it is a living record of imperfect, brilliant, sometimes pained people. Historians still argue whether such marginalia were tolerated, encouraged, or systematically scrubbed by later, more rigid librarians. In this moment, under the silent gaze of Keeper Ananda, you decide to tolerate it. You add your own minute dot in the margin, acknowledging Mahanama's dental advice, and carry on, the ghost of his toothache a companion in your quiet labor. The world, which had shrunk to the intimate space between your stylus and a leaf, suddenly expands again with a jolt. A high-ranking official from the Bureau of External Affairs enters the scriptorium, his silk robes whispering against the stone floor, a stark contrast to the dusty, hemp-clad librarians. He needs a scribe with an impeccable hand and, crucially, the ability to work quickly and without error on a formal, diplomatic document. The keeper points a bony finger at you. The document is a trade agreement. Not between local chiefs, but between your king and a representative of a distant, almost mythical people, a Roman merchant from the empire far to the west. The Romans, or Roma as they are called, are rare but legendary figures in Anuradhapura, bringers of strange glass, intricate jewelry, gold coins stamped with alien faces, and most importantly, vast quantities of wine and red coral. They arrive on enormous ships at the port of Mantai, and their dealings require the gravity of inscribed metal, not perishable leaf. You are taken to a chamber where the negotiation has just concluded. The air smells of sandalwood and a strange, musky perfume you've never encountered. The Roman is there. He is a startling sight, taller than most Sinhalese men, with a sun-reddened face, eyes the color of the sky, and hair the shade of ripe wheat. He wears a tunic of fine, patterned wool and speaks through a translator, a Tamil man who fluidly moves between the Romans' guttural Latin, the local Sinhala, and the diplomatic Pali. The terms are recited: tariffs on spices, guarantees of safe harbor, exchange rates for Roman denarii against local kahapanas, protocols for dispute resolution. Your task is to inscribe the agreed-upon terms onto a set of copper plates. These plates, once inscribed and witnessed, will be bound together with a royal seal, creating a permanent, immutable record of the pact. The pressure is immense. There is no room for error. You cannot scratch and polish out a mistake on copper as you might on an ola leaf. A single slip of the graver would mean starting over on a new, expensive plate, wasting time and precious metal, and potentially insulting the impatient Roman merchant whose ship's departure is timed with the monsoon winds. Your hands, trained for years on forgiving palm leaf, feel clumsy and heavy. You are given a sharp, hardened steel graver and a small, thick sheet of hammered copper, its surface cleaned with vinegar and ash until it gleams dully. You must incise the text deeply and clearly, in a formal, monumental version of the script, so it can be read for generations. You take a deep breath, falling back on your earliest training. You forget the Romans' strange eyes, the importance of the document, the value of the copper. You see only the line that needs to be drawn. You place the point of the graver and push. The metal resists with a gritty, shrieking feedback that sets your teeth on edge, a sound utterly alien after the soft scratch of palm leaf. You find the angle, the pressure. The first character, a majestic, broad-shouldered letter, is born in a cowl of bright copper filament. You work with a slow, deliberate rhythm, the world narrowing to the track of your tool. The Roman occasionally leans over to watch, his perfume wafting over you, but you don't look up. You are a machine of precision. The translator murmurs the text clause by clause, and you transform sound into enduring metal. As you work on the second plate, you become aware of the content beyond the mere words. You are inscribing the reach of your island. Cinnamon from the hill country, prized in Rome, will be weighed and priced according to these lines. Pepper from the Malabar coast, funneled through your ports, will follow this agreement. In return, Roman glassware will grace the tables of nobles, and their heavy gold coins will be melted down for temple ornaments. You are scratching the blueprint of a connection that spans half the known world. It is a heady thought. The document itself is a fascinating hybrid. The text is in Pali, the lingua franca of diplomacy and religion, but the witnessing officials include titles in Sinhala, Tamil, and even a transliterated attempt at the Roman's name and title. You etch it all, a linguistic mosaic frozen in metal. When you finally put the graver down, your hand is cramped into a claw, and your ears ring from the metallic screech. The plates are inspected, nodded over. The Roman, through his translator, offers a grunt of approval, a universal sound for a job well done. He presses a single, small silver coin into your hand as a personal token, not payment. It is cool and heavy, stamped with the profile of an emperor you will never know. You have just participated in global history, and all you feel is a profound desire for silence and the familiar, gentle resistance of a palm leaf. The dry season holds its breath, the air growing thicker and hotter each day until it feels like you are trying to breathe warm oil. Then, the monsoon breaks with a violence that seems personal. It doesn't rain, the sky turns into a waterfall. Torrents of water lash the whitewashed buildings of Anuradhapura for days, turning streets into rivers, and the vast tanks on the city's edges swell ominously. Your concern, however, is for the library. The main hall is on high ground, but the older, subterranean storage chambers, the Olkit, where lesser used or duplicate manuscripts are kept, are vulnerable. They are designed to stay cool and dry, but no one alive has seen rain like this. On the third day of the deluge, a frantic novice splashes into the scriptorium with the dreaded news. Water is seeping into the lowest chamber. What follows is not a dignified scholarly endeavor. It is a muddy, desperate, terrifying rescue operation. You, along with every able-bodied scribe, librarian, and novice, form a human chain down the slick stone steps into the gloom. The lower chamber is a scene of quiet horror. A dark, inch-deep slurry of water and ooze covers the floor, seeping up from the saturated earth. The smell is of wet earth, rot, and panic. The older manuscript racks, their wooden legs porous, are already wicking moisture up towards the precious leaves. Your task is to evacuate the entire chamber, moving thousands of manuscripts to the upper floors. There is no time for reverence. You wade into the cold water, your robes plastered to your legs. You grab armfuls of bundled manuscripts, their familiar wooden covers now chillingly damp to the touch. You pass them up the chain of hands, a frantic relay racing against the rising damp. You slip on the slimy stones, nearly dropping a bundle of centuries-old Jataka tales, your heart lurching into your throat. You see the physical fragility of your life's work in the starkest terms. A text that survived 1,000 years of careful study can be undone by a single day's flood. The ink on some of the newer paper-based texts, a rare, expensive import, is already beginning to run, creating blue and black ghosts on the margins. The panic is a living thing in the chamber, choked down by the sheer physical effort. Then, you discover the mold. In a far corner, on a shelf that seemed dry, a bundle reveals a horrifying, beautiful tracery of white and blue-green fungus spreading across the cover like a malignant lace. It is both mesmerizing and gut-wrenching. The keeper, Ananda, who is directing the operation with a grim calm, sees it. "Isolate it," he commands, his voice cutting through the din. "Do not let it touch the others. That bundle stays here." It is a death sentence. The manuscript, whatever it contained, is sacrificed to save the rest. You handle it with a sort of horrified reverence, placing it alone on a high, dry stone ledge, a quarantine of one. You feel like you are abandoning a wounded comrade. The work goes on for hours. Your back screams, your hands are numb, and your world is reduced to the weight of the texts and the urgent shout of "pass it along." By the time the last manuscript is hauled to safety and the chamber is abandoned to the water, you are coated in mud, sweat, and a fine, black dust from the disintegrating edges of the oldest leaves. You sit on the upper steps, exhausted, watching the monks and senior scribes begin the next, more delicate phase, assessment and salvage. The rescued manuscripts are laid out on every available dry surface in the main hall, on tables, on cloths on the floor, even on the laps of scribes. They must be gently dried, leaf by leaf, separated if they are stuck, cleaned of mud with soft brushes, and treated with preservatives. It is work that will take months. You look at the sea of vulnerable knowledge, the patient, heartbroken scribes bending over their charges, and you understand something new. The enemy of history is not always fire or war. Sometimes, it is just water, and mold, and time. And the only defense is a chain of muddy, determined hands in the dark, passing the words upward, toward the light. The flood's aftermath leaves the library in a state of convalescence. The air, normally still and scholarly, is now thick with the sense of active preservation. The sharp tang of vinegar solutions for cleaning, the astringent bite of stronger preservatives, and the constant, low heat from charcoal braziers placed at a safe distance to gently dry the dampest leaves. You are assigned to a team rehabilitating a set of philosophical commentaries. The work is painstaking, requiring you to carefully separate leaves that have stuck together, to brush away dried mud from incised letters with a fine porcupine quill, and to decide which stains can be left and which obscure the text too much. It is during this somber, restorative work that you commit your quiet rebellion. The text you are working on is a well-known passage from the Dhammapada, a collection of the Buddha's sayings. You have copied it before. You know its rhythms by heart. The verse is about mindfulness. Heedfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death. The heedful die not. The heedless are as if dead already. As you clean the ancient, beautifully incised letters, the words wash over you not as sacred formula, but as a direct commentary on your own life. Your heedfulness, your attention to detail, has been your entire existence. It has brought you from a village to a royal library. It has saved texts from water. But it has also been a cage of repetition, of silent service. You are a vessel, a conduit. Where are you in these lines you preserve? Your hand, guided by a thought that feels both terrifying and inevitable, reaches for your stylus. Not to copy, but to add. On the freshly cleaned, dry margin of the leaf, in a space no bigger than your thumbnail, you incise a tiny, personal observation. You do not write in formal grantha or even sinhala. You use a simplified, cursive form, the kind you'd use for a private note. The act feels electrically transgressive. The stylus seems to burn in your hand. You write, but what of the path between? The one where you are heedful, yet alive. It is a whisper, a breath of dust against the thunder of canonical truth. It is not a correction. It is not even a critique. It is a question, your question, etched into the periphery of eternity. You immediately feel a flush of panic. This is arrogance. This is the graffiti of the self on the temple wall of tradition. If Keeper Ananda sees it, your career in the library, perhaps in the city, is over. You consider trying to burnish it away, but you know it would leave a scar, a telltale smooth patch more suspicious than the tiny script itself. So you let it be. You close the leaf, bind it back into its bundle, and place it on the stack for reshelving. Your heart hammers against your ribs. You have placed a piece of your own soul into the vast, impersonal body of knowledge. It is an act of breathtaking insignificance and profound personal courage. You have spoken back. 4 days, you are haunted by your own marginalia. You avoid that section of the library. You expect at any moment to be summoned, accused, cast out. But nothing happens. The bundle is shelved. The world continues. Your tiny note is swallowed by the silence of millions of other letters. It is likely no one will ever see it. Or, if they do, they will dismiss it as the idle scribble of a bored or arrogant scribe from a forgotten age. But you know it is there. And in that knowing, something shifts. You are no longer just a copyist. You have, in the smallest way possible, become an author. Your relationship to the texts changes. You begin to see the other margins not as empty borders, but as potential spaces, spaces where, over centuries, other scribes may have also whispered their doubts, their aches, their jokes. You start looking for them, in between the lines of the great, unchanging truths. Historians still argue whether such marginalia were acts of subversion, pedagogical notes, or simply the human inability to remain completely silent in the face of monolithic authority. For you, in this moment, it was simply the need to say I was here. And I wondered. Time, which you have spent your life inscribing into orderly lines, begins to assert its own, less tidy narrative on you and the world around you. Seasons turn, kings die and are succeeded, and in the library, scribes age. You are no longer the youngest, steadiest hand. You have gained a reputation for flawless work and, more importantly, for patience, a virtue in painfully short supply among the newer novices sent from various monasteries to serve in the capital. One morning, Keeper Ananda, now so frail he seems made of the same parchment he tends, gestures you over. A boy stands nervously beside him, perhaps 12 years old, his head freshly shaven, his eyes wide with the same overwhelming awe you once felt. This is Rahula, the keeper wheezes. He can draw a straight line. Teach him to draw a truth. And so, the cycle turns. You are given an apprentice. Your first reaction is a surge of resentment. Your time is precious. Your own projects, the careful restoration of a water-damaged astronomical chart, will now be delayed by the fumbling, inevitable mistakes of a child. You look at Rahula. He is all sharp elbows and nervous energy, his fingers constantly moving as if already itching to hold a stylus. He reminds you, uncomfortably, of yourself. You take him to your workspace, the same one you've occupied for years. You sit him down and, without ceremony, place a clay board and a sharpened twig before him. Draw a horizontal line, you say, your voice sounding eerily like Brother Mahindu's. He grabs the twig like a weapon and slashes a ragged, diagonal gash across the clay. You say nothing. You smooth your own board, take your own twig, and draw a single, perfect line. You hand him the twig back. Again. Thus begins the long, often frustrating dance of transmission. You lead him through the same steps that formed you, lines, curves, patterns on clay. You teach him to prepare an ola leaf, watching him ruin 3 with clumsy knife work before he manages to trim 1 without a tear. You show him how to hold the panhinda, and you wince as he drives it straight through a practice leaf on his first attempt. His mistakes are your old mistakes, but watching them from the outside is a special kind of agony. It forces you to articulate instincts that have lived in your muscles and silence for decades. You don't push with your finger, you pull from your shoulder. The leaf is skin, not wood. Respect it. Breathe out as you finish the curve. He is impatient. He wants to write sacred texts immediately. He finds the foundational drills boring. One afternoon, after he has botched a simple character for the 10th time, he slams the stylus down in frustration. Why does it matter? He bursts out. It's just 1 letter in thousands. Who will see? The question hangs in the air. You look at him, at the angry young face, and you see the profound gap between you. For him, the text is a destination. For you, the letter is the journey. You don't reprimand him. Instead, you take the damaged leaf. You point to the botched character. "This is not a mistake in a letter," you say quietly. "This is a crack in a vessel. If the vessel is cracked here," you move your finger to the next, correctly formed character. "The meaning may still hold. But if every letter is made with this carelessness, the vessel shatters. The meaning is lost." The future reader sees only our laziness, not the Buddha's wisdom. They see us, Rahula. They always see us. He stares at you, the anger deflating, replaced by a dawning, heavy understanding. He nods, picks up his stylus, and smooths a new leaf. He begins again. In teaching him, you are forced to revisit your own foundations. You find yourself remembering the scent of the village dust, the feel of the monk's hand over yours, the terror and pride of your first commission. You are not just passing on a skill, you are passing on a lineage, a chain of quiet attention that stretches back into the dark of time. You become fiercely protective of him, shielding him from the worst of the bureaucratic drudgery, insisting he spend time on the fundamentals. You catch yourself using phrases you swore you'd never use. "In my day, and when I was your age," it is horrifying and deeply funny. You are becoming the elder. And in his slow, hard-won progress, the first time he nails a complex conjunct consonant, the day he successfully prepares a batch of ink without curdling it, you feel a pride that is different from any you've felt for your own work. It is the pride of the riverbed, watching a new stream find its course. The first sign is a subtle one. The fine, incised letters on the ola leaf, which once stood out to you with crisp, black and white clarity, begin to swim slightly if you read for too long in the dim light of the late afternoon. You find yourself holding leaves closer to your face, then at arm's length, searching for the sweet spot of focus that is slowly, inexorably slipping away. The world at a distance remains sharp. You can see a hawk circling over the great stupa from the library window with perfect clarity. But the intimate world of your work, the universe contained within a hand's breadth, is softening at the edges. It is the great, ironic joke of a scribe's life. The very act that defines you is the one your body will first betray. The eyes that have deciphered thousand-year-old smudges and judged the straightness of a line are now failing you. There is no cure, only adaptation. You acquire a pair of convex reading lenses, a rare and expensive luxury brought by Arab traders. They are two small, polished spheres of rock crystal, set in a wooden frame that balances precariously on your nose. They are a marvel, bending the light to bring the letters back into shocking focus, but they give you a ferocious headache after an hour of use and make you look, as Rahula cheekily points out, like a confused owl. You use them sparingly, for the most critical inspection. For the rest, you rely on memory and touch. This is where a lifetime of discipline pays its final dividends. Your hands, though now marked with the fine tracery of age spots and the subtle tremor of fatigue that comes at the end of a long day, possess a memory of their own. Your muscle memory is flawless. You can inscribe a leaf now with barely a glance, your hand moving with the surety of a river finding its bed. The stylus knows the angles, the pressures, the dance. You close your eyes and write, and when you open them, the line is perfect. It is a strange, disembodied skill, your mind holding the text while your body executes it, a partnership deepened by necessity. You begin to work in a new way, a collaborative duet with Rahula. You dictate. He inscribes. At first, it is frustrating for you both. You are used to the silent communion between thought and mark. Now you must translate the text in your mind into spoken word, with all its potential for ambiguity. You must describe not just the words, but the layout. Leave a space the width of 2 grains of rice. Now, a header in red, the characters half again as large, curve the tail of that letter downward, not across. He must then interpret your instructions through his own, still developing skill. It is a test of your ability to teach and his to listen. You become a living library, reciting long passages from the Tipitaka or royal edicts from decades past, your voice a low, steady stream in the quiet scriptorium. He becomes your hands, his stylus scratching the rhythm of your speech onto the leaf. In this role, you discover a new dimension to the craft. You are no longer just a producer of texts, you are a source of them. You realize how much you have accumulated, not on shelves, but in the vault of your mind. You remember not just the words, but the context, the feel of the leaf, the color of the ink, the slight flaw in the third character of the second line of that particular copy of the Metasutta you made 20 years ago. This internal archive is now your primary asset. Scholars come to you with questions about variant readings. Did this medical text originally say to use the root of the kikirindi plant or the leaf? You close your eyes, travel back to the manuscript you copied after the Great Flood, and see the incised word clearly, mula. Root. You are a human concordance. The physical frailty of your eyes has elevated you into something else, a custodian of the living word. Your hands may be steadier than your sight, but your true worth now lies in the dark, well-ordered vault behind your dimming eyes. It is a pleasant, peaceful power. The pressure to produce is gone, replaced by the authority to remember. The royal summons, when it comes this time, is not a demand, but a release. A new, young, ambitious keeper of the library has taken over, a man more interested in efficient production and currying favor with courtiers than in the slow, deep work of preservation and memory. Your method, the deliberate, dictative pace with Rahula, is seen as quaint, inefficient. The atmosphere in the scriptorium changes, becoming louder, more hurried, more political. You feel like a gnarled old tree in a field of fast-growing bamboo. You request, and are granted with what feels like relieved haste, permission to retire from royal service. Your pension is a modest but adequate stipend of rice and oil, and more importantly, the freedom to go where you wish. You do not return to your childhood village. That path is closed, its memories belonging to a different person. Instead, you ask to be accepted at a small forest hermitage, a Vanavasa, in the hill country south of the capital. It is a place known not for scholarship, but for quiet meditation. Rahula, now a competent scribe in his own right, chooses to stay in the capital, his ambition kindled by the new regime. Your parting is quiet, an exchange of a final, perfectly prepared stylus from you, a promise to visit from him. You know he likely won't. The journey to the hermitage is a winding climb into green. The air grows cooler, smelling of pine resin and damp fern. The noise of the world, the carts, the bells, the bureaucratic murmur, falls away, replaced by the sound of wind in tall trees and a clear, cold stream tumbling over rocks. The hermitage is just a few simple huts built around a cave where a revered meditation teacher lives. There are only a handful of monks and a few elderly lay devotees here. There is no library. There is no scriptorium. For the first time in decades, you are not surrounded by the physical weight of texts. And yet, you cannot stop. It is in your blood, the rhythm of the line, the need to make the thought permanent. You set up a small, personal workspace under the eaves of your hut. You prepare your own leaves from the talapat palms that grow nearby, finding a deep pleasure in the full, uninterrupted cycle of the craft, from tree to finished leaf. You make your inks from the soot of your own lamp. But now, you write only what you choose. No royal decrees. No merchant's accounts. No preservation of texts you have copied 100 times before. You copy only the texts that have brought you peace over the years. The verses on compassion, the suttas on the nature of the mind, the simple, beautiful poetry of the Theragatha, the songs of the early monks. Your work is for merit now, not for kings or coins. You inscribe a perfect copy of the Karaniya Metta Sutta, the Buddha's words on loving kindness, and present it to the meditation teacher. He accepts it with a serene smile, not as a bureaucratic document, but as a gesture of the heart. The pace of your life slows to match the rhythm of the forest. You write for an hour in the cool of the morning, when your eyes are best. You meditate. You walk along the forest paths. You help tend a small vegetable garden. In the afternoons, you sometimes simply sit and watch the play of light through the canopy. The frantic drive for perfection, the fear of error, the pressure of time, all of it melts away. Your hand is as steady as ever, but each stroke is now infused with a quality that was often missing in the Royal Library: joy. A pure, uncomplicated pleasure in the act itself. You are not preserving a tradition for an institution. You are weaving your own understanding into the leaves, a final, personal conversation with the teachings that have shaped your life. The manuscripts you produce are few, but they are perhaps the most beautiful of your life, unrushed, each character sitting on the leaf with a sense of calm certainty. They are your offering, not to an empire, but to the quiet of the forest and the peace of your own mind. This is the retirement you had never dared imagine, not an end to writing, but the beginning of writing solely for the sake of the soul. The morning dawns clear and still, the kind of morning that feels like a held breath. You know, with a calm certainty that has nothing to do with fever or ailment, that this day is different. Your body is tired, a vessel worn thin, but your mind is lucid, a still pool reflecting a lifetime of lines and letters. You perform your simple routines, the drink of water from the spring, the few moments of silent meditation on the hut's threshold, the careful arrangement of your tools on the low writing table. Today, you will write your final leaf. You select one you prepared weeks ago, a leaf of exceptional quality, supple and flawless, its surface the color of pale honey. You smooth it on the board, your fingertips reading its texture like a blind man reading a face. You do not reach for your reading lenses. You will not need them. You know the passage by heart. It is not the most profound, nor the most complex. It is from the Sutta Nipata, and it has echoed in your mind since your earliest days as a novice. As a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not shaken by praise or blame. It has been your silent motto through the praise of kings and the silent blame of crumbling texts, through the frustrations of teaching and the solitude of the forest. It feels right. You take your stylus, the one you made with Bandula the smith a lifetime ago. Its weight is as familiar as your own heartbeat. You begin. There is no hesitation. The stylus touches the leaf and moves, a slow, graceful dance. You are not thinking of the individual letters. You are not thinking of the future reader. You are simply the channel through which the line flows from the world of thought into the world of form. Each stroke is an act of letting go. You feel the years in your hand, the childhood patterns in the dust, the monk's guiding grip, the blistering work on the copper plate, the muddy salvation of texts, the whispered rebellion in the margin, the patient guidance of Rahula's hand. All of it is in this motion. The text unfurls down the leaf, line after perfect line, a river of meaning finding its bed. Your breathing is slow and even, synchronized with the gentle scritch-scritch of the metal point. You are, in this moment, the perfect union of mind, body, and tool. There is no separation. You are writing, and you are being written. You reach the final phrase, "Ane nindaya ane pasasya." Neither by blame nor by praise. You make the last character, a flowing, closing curve, and lift the stylus. The silence that follows is profound, a positive silence, full of completion. You look at the leaf. It is, without arrogance, a masterpiece. The spacing is impeccable, the characters balanced and graceful, each one bearing the weight of a lifetime of discipline. It is your lasting imprint. Not a grand monument, not a changed law, but this, a few lines of truth, rendered beautiful and permanent by a steady hand on a silent morning in the forest. You set the stylus down. You do not burnish it. You leave the letters raised, tactile, waiting for the gentle rub of the stone that you will not give them. It is enough that they exist. You place the leaf on a small stand where the morning sun slants through the bamboo wall, illuminating the incised letters, making them cast tiny, elongated shadows. You sit back, and a deep, quiet fatigue settles over you, not unwelcome, like a soft blanket. You have spoken your last word to the future. It is a good word. You close your eyes, listening to the wind in the trees, a sound like a distant, endless exhalation. Your work is done. The forest hermitage is very quiet. The stream continues its gentle song over the rocks, a constant, patient rhythm beneath the chatter of birds and the rustle of leaves in the mountain breeze. In a small hut under the eaves, a single ola leaf rests on a stand, catching the dappled light. The incised letters upon it are clean and deep, a final, elegant statement made without fanfare. The hand that made them is still at last, its long labor complete. The leaf will dry and darken with time. It may be found by a monk, perhaps added to a small collection, or simply remain there as a quiet testament. The words it holds are ancient, spoken centuries before, and will be copied again centuries hence. But this particular rendering, this specific arrangement of lines and curves, is unique. It is the silent culmination of a life devoted to the space between thought and mark, to the sacred act of holding a line steady against the pull of time, against the distraction of the world, against the inevitable tremble of one's own humanity. That life, your life as the quiet scribe, was not one of battle cries or discovered continents. It was a life of incremental victories, a character perfectly formed, a decaying text saved, a truth passed intact to a new pair of hands. It was a life lived in service to the voices of others, yet in its final, private act, it spoke with its own gentle authority. You built no monuments, but you anchored whispers to the earth so they could travel further on the wind. In a world of noise and impermanence, you practiced the radical art of paying attention, and in doing so, you touched eternity in a grain of dust, in a curl of soot, in the fine, raised line on a palm leaf. So let the images soften now, the feel of the stylus, the scent of the old library, the glow of the copper plate, the chill of the flood water, all of it, let it blur and recede into a gentle, warm haze. The story is told. The night is deep and still around you, a comfortable weight. Your own breath is the only rhythm that matters now, slow and even, in and out, like the tide on a distant shore you can no longer see. There is no more work to be done. Nothing to inscribe. Nothing to preserve. Only the quiet, the dark, and the profound, grateful peace of a story that has reached its natural, perfect end.